Yes, yes. Recording in progress.
And we're live.
Good evening, and welcome to the June 11th, 2024 City Commission Work Session. Mr. Wiley, would you please read the roll call?
Commissioner O'Donnell is absent. Commissioner Marl?
Here.
Commissioner Mitchell?
Here.
Commissioner Smith?
Here.
Mayor McGriff?
Present. All right, so we have several items on our future agenda items list, and I'm going to turn that over to City Manager Conkle.
Yep, thank you, Mayor, evening commissioners. So kind of a new one since I've been here, and it's been a long time, where we've canceled the meeting, the second meeting in June, and the first meeting in July. So our next meeting is July 9th, Tuesday, July 9th, which is typically our work session night. As you've seen tonight, that agenda tends to fill up. So right now we're holding that for potentially a Urban Renewal Commission meeting from 6 to 7, and then a regular meeting for the items that we have not gotten, that we won't be able to get to over the next month or so. So right now I don't have a specific work session item scheduled for the July 9th meeting, realizing that over the next couple of weeks, there's probably going to fill in some things there. So yeah, right now, we're just kind of holding that for urban renewal and regular city commission items that did not make tonight's meeting.
Anything else?
That's all that I have.
Commissioners, any questions about that? All right, next on our agenda, we have two discussion items. Number one, Oregon City Transit Center redesign project presentation. And again, I'll turn that back over to Mr. Conkle, or is that Mr. Lewis?
Oh, and actually we're going to have Miss Dana Webb come up and start this introduction and presentation and discussion for tonight.
Perfect, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm here tonight to start the conversation with you about the Oregon City Transit Center redesign project. Just a little bit of background. The city, along with TriMet and Clackamas County, began discussions about a transit center in Oregon City all the way back in 1980. And really, since then, have worked collaboratively with the city, the county, ODOT, Metro, TriMet, and even back in 1985 with the Downtown Oregon City Association on siting a transit center in our downtown. That technical team back in 1985 worked through 13 alternative sites in our downtown and ultimately selected the 11th Street site as the preferred alternative. From there, TriMet began preliminary engineering and cost estimates for the project, and the city passed a resolution supporting the selection of the project site, supporting the project. From there, we went forward with an IGA allowing TriMet to place their transit center on city right-of-way. And additionally, we provided some funding for the project back then. So that IGA really looked at maintenance, operation, and liability responsibilities for the project. Since then, we've been working with Clackamas County, Metro, and TriMet, acknowledging the need for additional transit services both in Oregon City and the Clackamas County as a whole. This has been noted in various documents over the years: the TriMet Southeast Service Enhancement Plan, the Clackamas County Transit Development Plan, Oregon City's Transportation System Plan, Forward Together 1.0 and 2.0, and TriMet's Express Bus Limited Stop Service Study. These documents all involve coordination with other transit providers in Clackamas County to how to best utilize that Oregon City Transit Center. Additionally, in April of 2022, Oregon City Mayor at the time, Liaison Smith, provided a letter of support for federal funding for an expansion of the transit center. TriMet's ultimately received federal funding to expand the transit center, and since then, we've been working with TriMet on the redesign of the project. And I'm going to let TriMet talk about the project itself. What I do want to share is, as we've looked into this with the transit center located on city right-of-way, that does not require a land use approval. it's considered an obstruction in the right-of-way. And so we would issue an obstruction permit that we would have an IGA attached to that addresses maintenance, responsibilities, who owns what components located in the right-of-way. And included in the packet is a memo from Assistant City Attorney Carrie Richter related to that. So tonight, TriMet's going to share with you their proposed plan. What I would like is guidance from the commission on any feedback related to that IGA that you have. And so I think I'd like to hand it over to TriMet to discuss the project.
So before you do that, are there any questions by the commissioners to Ms. Webb? Okay, also I would, you did not mention that we did meet on site with TriMet staff, probably was it February or March, to walk the site physically and look at some of the suggestions that they had made, and we made some suggestions back. Dana.
Okay, well, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Commissioners, for having us tonight to kind of walk through our ideas for the transit center. And I would just want to say thank you to the staff that has let us share ideas, going back and forth a lot, having conversations. We've landed on something. I think we're pretty happy with it, and I hope that everybody will be too. So just to orientate us, I've got about 10 slides to go through. I can always go back or answer any questions, but just so we're all at this sort of baseline.
Don't forget name for the record.
Oh, I'm sorry, Michael Corrente,
Yeah.
Project Manager, TriMet. So for baseline, just to start with, this is our transit center, obviously on Main Street. So a couple of photos just showing the existing, basically our restroom that we have there now. It's very small. I've got another slide that kind of shows that, where our partner agencies pull up, get CAT bus stop right in front of the crew room right now. We also have behind our restrooms or sort of the shelter area where passengers gather. We have bus stops there. And then also off of Moss, we have the building, which is occupied by the county right now. So we have a couple of stops there as well. So why are we expanding? Why are we doing this project? We have support for increased service in Oregon City and Clackamas County, both by TriMet. So like Dana mentioned, we have our Forward Together 1.0 and 2.0. So this is in support of that, our growth over the next 20, 30 years. We received the federal earmark for $5 million. So we wanted, obviously use that to improve the transit center, and it's only for the transit center, for those funds, to use those funds. Upgrade our bus driver restroom. That helps support our bus operators, and it's a way to retain and for recruitment as well. Also bring amenities, our bus stop amenities, shelters, more welcoming environment. When I get to the plan, you'll kind of see what we try to plan in there as more of a frontage to Main Street and how that relates to the new building. And then again, long-term investment to meet ridership and service goals for our partners and for ourselves. And again, the Forward Together 1.0 and 2.0. So existing, this is kind of just an aerial view of the transit center right now. We have basically 6 stops, which are, we call them layovers. The bus will pull up, drop off passengers, sit there and dwell for a bit, and then the operators go into or they might use the restroom or heat up some food, and then basically get on the bus, pick up passengers, and then leave. And then there's, again, that yellow box is for where we have the CAT pulls up. There's a few partner agencies that use that as well. And then right in front of KFC on Main, we have some space right now that we use for parking. When we have maintenance vehicles that come in, they'll park there, or a bus will park there as well. And again, they may have a layover, so they'll just sit there and wait, and then they'll pick up passengers. We want to recognize too, what does Main Street have right now? We want to fit within Main Street, the character of it, some of the things that it offers now. So the next couple of slides are just acknowledging what is there. So the public art, we want to have a component with our building or somewhere in our transit center that we have some public art, whether it's a mural, whether it's some sort of statue or something, or some three-dimensional form. We do want to include that with the transit center, again, trying to fit within Main Street. We recognize different lighting styles. We will replace ours and again, fit within Main Street, whatever we need to do, again, to fit within that. Just some of the amenities and wayfinding, acknowledging some of the things that you've done recently on Main Street with the improvements at some of the intersections, even just the street names, the banners, some of the wayfinding actually into the concrete, benches for seating. So again, those are things that we would like to include as well. Recent intersections that have been upgraded. There's the top left is at 12th. That's kind of a similar treatment I think what we would have in the transit center, just because of some of the radiuses and the turns that we're dealing with. But also the one in the middle, top middle, again, just the new intersection improvements that are done. And then on the bottom is just realizing that you've got some stormwater facilities along 10th there. Maybe that's something we can also include on our site. And then also the tree wells and those treatments and different ways to do that. But again, we want to be partners here. So whatever that we need to do to fit within Main Street, we will do that. Recognizing some of the intersection treatments, so the paving and the scoring, the bollard style, and even just some of the architecture, how it addresses the sidewalk, the canopies that are there. You'll see later on in the slide that we've tried to mimic this in a way, again, trying to fit within Main Street, and then the street trees and sort of that nice sort of passenger corridor. Right now, this is our plan. It's very conceptual, but this is the one that we'd like to push forward and actually design out. This gives us 6 layover, basically bus parking spaces behind our crew room building. The crew room building that you see now today would be gone. We would replace it with this new building. And then we have on Main Street between sort of the, let's say the curb back to the building. Will this work here? No, it won't work on the screen. So the bus driver restroom, that's the building that we would replace what we have now. But between that, the front of that, and then to Main Street is about 30 feet. So we have room to put in street trees, street lights, a shelter or a canopy, some seating, again, to kind of blend into the Main Street character. And we would want to keep our parking that we have in front of KFC. And I will say that both stops, the one that's in front of the crew room building is for buses that would be traveling basically southbound Main Street. And then we have a stop across KFC, but across Main, and then traveling north. Both of those stops are out of lane. So we're not going to block traffic going either direction. And this last slide here is just a sketch of what that building might look like. Again, some of the canopies sort of coming out of the front entrance with our name on it, having the glazing, the storefront there. And then this is, again, just very conceptual, but it's about 1,400 square feet. Right now, our restroom for our operators is about 200 square feet, if that. So it's very, very small. And that's all I have.
Could you go back to the site plan real quick and just talk a little bit about the existing condition right now for like southbound Main Street is a pull-off in front of KSC for a stop, correct? Or
Right now, it's just basically a bus parking spot.
bus parking spot.
We'd want to retain that.
And so I think one of the things that we talked quite a bit about was one of the options was more of a in-lane stop, northbound, southbound on Main Street versus, getting it off of the through lane, right? So you're essentially on the east side, losing some parking to get off out of the travel lane, correct?
Correct. There's 2 spots that we would ask for to take, so we could put that bus stop out of lane.
And so if you could talk a little bit about what like the typical delay for an in-lane stop would be, what you expected, if you still have that information. Because, it was trying to balance parking versus, stopping traffic on Main Street, right, to do a bus stop, and what's more ideal. So that was one thing we had quite a bit of discussion about when trying to look at what the design options were and what the availability was here.
Yeah, we average about 20 seconds for a bus to stop if they're in lane. That would hold up traffic. But as Tony's explaining, we would not be, that would not be the condition here. We would be out of lane, and then we would, once we load up, and then pull into the lane once the traffic clears around us.
Michael, could you just point to that with the and or the arrow, just so that
Evan, can you help?
Yeah.
public and the commissioners?
If you go down, go down, and
On
then
Main Street.
to the right.
Yeah,
Keep going. There you go. That one right there.
right there.
And again, the one in front of the crew room building as well on Main Street would be out of lane.
building are you referring to?
That's where it says bus driver restroom. If you go to there you go, that one right there.
Oh, you're giving it
Yep.
a name, okay, I just wasn't,
Yeah.
thought you were talking about the county building that's on the opposite side of the street. Are there any questions, commissioners?
Yeah, I've got a couple.
Go ahead.
So compared to conditions today, this costs us 2 parking spaces, is that in total?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. So there's a stop in front of the auto parts store. There's other agencies, right? And then there's a stop in front of your restroom building. And then there's a stop across the street.
Correct. Yes. There's
Okay.
the one on the south,
Okay.
basically the south side of Main Street. Yes.
Today, there isn't a stop on the other side of the street, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
It makes me a little concerned about pedestrians.
Well, we intend to work with, I know that there is a future Main Street project. So we would like to work with the city to figure out, how we can blend with that and bring in these pedestrian improvements that we're showing. So we would like to do that as well.
Okay. Just one more thing. I hope that sketch of the restroom building is a real rough sketch,
It is.
Okay.
It is.
because that's not a very attractive building, my opinion.
Okay.
Okay, that's it for me.
Adam, you have anything?
Yes, so it looks like the TriMet bus parking total does not increase from the current to the new design, is that correct?
Dan, are we even or are we 1 plus or plus 1?
Well, I think earlier,
I'll go back.
Sorry, for the record, Dan Marchand, TriMet Service Planning Manager. Great question. Currently 6 bays available today. That's a mix of buses parking and just serving a stop and going. This project will dedicate 6 spaces for parking. We will also, and then in addition to that, you'll have the 3 service stops. So there's a net increase of 9. 3
Yeah.
bays,
Yeah.
wait, my math is a little off.
Okay, thank you. That's what I have.
Rocky, do you have anything?
Yeah, a few things. First for staff, on let's see. The section of Main Street that is that current block where the right-of-way is the sidewalks are how wide?
I believe they're 7 feet wide.
7. How wide are the bus shelters?
Which one are you referring to?
The ones on the 7-foot sidewalks.
Well, they wouldn't be 7 foot. I mean, the one that we're showing in south on Main, there's like a little bike parking pad that's there.
Yeah, but the others,
So it wouldn't
there
be-
is not.
We wouldn't be blocking it. The way that we've designed, our new design would not block people to go. You could walk under it and it would be off the sidewalk a little bit as well.
It's very uneasy to tell in your renderings. In fact, it's hard to tell that there's any consistency with the bus shelters at all. My concern is, one, the reduction in the amount of shelter space at the transit center currently versus these 3 little stops that would have individual shelters rather than this larger shelter. And the other piece is clearly on the one that is labeled ending routes, that has a sidewalk that's substantial enough to probably support a shelter and still have what would be considered a fairly good-sized sidewalk. However, on the other sections of the sidewalk, if the sidewalks are 7 feet, even if you can walk through the shelter, which is rare in cities I've been to, but even if you could, it's taking a big part of that 7-foot sidewalk. And that's not even considering a bus parking there. So if you have a bus parking there and you have a 7-foot sidewalk and part of it has a structure in it, it leaves a couple of feet to get by in between a bus and a shelter, which means if you're crossing someone on the sidewalk, even one or two people, you have to figure out how to get through it. I've been to so many cities where, even that are not walkable, where you find yourself in a 2 or 3 feet space trying to get around a bus shelter and people coming at you, and even if there's 2 or 3 people, it's hard to determine, how to get through there. So the reduction in shelters in general and how it's actually going to be placed on the sidewalk is a huge concern. If any of our businesses even put a table on a sidewalk that takes up space, we have concerns about it, let alone a 3-foot shelter that's in the center of the sidewalk or to one side. So I'd like to see how that really works, especially on those areas where the narrow sidewalks are. Just because of the space in general, but then you park a bus there next to it, and you're trying to get in between a tall, huge, massive bus and a couple of feet here and there. We don't have visuals that really show that. And then I can kind of tell where the bus shelters are in this drawing, but yet the bus shelters on each section look different. So I'm trying to say, okay, I'm assuming, the one on the lower right that is the what does it say, shelter for routes to CCC, with the kind of striped block there that almost looks like the top of a dumpster. I'm assuming that's the shelter for that, but then on the other side, or the other shelters don't match. So are they different sizes and different for each stop, or?
Yes.
I think we need more clarification how that works with the sidewalk, and I'm a visual person, so I need to kind of see that, but.
So more of a cross section.
Yeah.
Well, and I can address some of that. The different sizes are because right now we do have a separate program that's working on newer shelters. Also, the 7-foot, I think applies mainly in front of KFC. We would actually extend it out a little bit. There's not a shelter there, but we would work with the city again to try to improve that a little bit. On the south side, that's a smaller shelter on purpose because we do realize that there is an existing sidewalk there that we'd want to fit sort of behind that.
Yeah.
But then when you get in front of where the county is now, where we say expanded partner agency bus stop.
Use the arrow.
It won't, I can't do it.
Maybe Jacob can do it.
There we go. That one, we actually have more room than 7 feet. Our survey shows about 10 or 11 feet there.
Oh, yeah, I know that one there is, but
right.
The other two are pretty narrow.
And then also in front of our building that we're proposing right there, thank you, that would be a larger one, and we have 30 feet to work with, so we can put in a much larger one. We also have the room where you see the 3 trees just to the right side of the building. There, thank you, right there. And we could add another shelter there as well. Again, this is just a very conceptual, high-level look at it. We're more than willing to work with the city to put in more of that for shelter space, more seating. We recognize that is a space it's there for now. This is just kind of a placeholder. So we intend to put in a very large structure in there. I wouldn't say very large, a larger structure. I should be careful.
There's no doubt there's space in the island and in that, the other shared, whatever it is, the other shared agencies. When they have the 2 on Main Street, though, are the ones that I think we really need to see a layout of how that works, because I know those sidewalks are pretty narrow.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Commissioner Smith. I think one of the things that I was concerned about was, again, right now there's ample places for people to wait when they're transferring, because sometimes they might be going from one bus to the other bus, but there's, 20 minutes maybe or more trying to figure out where those people go as opposed to where they are able to go now. And then I think the thing I see here is that looks like you eliminated the bus pulling off on McLaughlin Boulevard and eliminating parking there. That was an earlier plan. Is that correct?
The existing parking remains, yes. We're not asking for that, no.
Yeah, okay, that was one of the changes. And then Dana, again, if you can help me out since you were on the walk, along with Mr. Lewis and Mr. Conkle. So we had also talked about that area where right now the buses come, because it's the opposite direction. So the buses come through from McLaughlin turn and then come down, and then the cars can also go down there. So I'm assuming you're eliminating that as well.
Yes, we've we would eliminate that left turn from McLaughlin into the transit center, and we would stripe that, improve that, and that gives you more queuing length for 10th Street as well.
So the direction they're going to be coming is down 10th Street and then turning right into the bus only?
No, they actually come from Main Street and then turn into the center.
Oh, excuse me,
The
yes,
transit
sorry,
center.
Main. Sorry,
Yes.
I didn't mean 10th, I meant Main. So they're coming up from Main Street where the arrows, where the hand is going, and then making a left turn into that?
Could be either from 12th or 10th to Main.
Okay,
But the general flow will be one direction.
okay, all right, that's what I was asking. So, Dana, has this next iteration addressed some of the concerns that we talked about on the site visit?
I believe so. So the other thing that was kind of mentioned is an early iteration had an in-lane bus stop on McLaughlin Boulevard and removal of some of that parking. And so that has been removed based on feedback from the city. And
Yeah, I
then this,
mentioned that right away, so.
and this scenario removes that left turn from McLaughlin. And so what that's going to allow us to do is have a longer left turn queue storage for the vehicles turning onto 10th Street, which is going to create a little bit safer situation because it isn't going to block the through lanes.
Okay. Now, where it says on here, TriMet non-bus parking, and there's a blue dot there, what is that?
That would be for like a maintenance vehicle that we have that would come and service
okay.
the area, yeah.
Yeah, I was looking at it on the slide, and it's easier to see when it's blown up like this, so I couldn't quite tell what that was. So, commissioners, do you have any additional direction besides the wanting to see more information on how the public will be able to navigate around the bus shelters in those specific locations identified by Commissioner Smith?
Just two quick questions, if I may, Mayor.
Sure.
Thank you. So I see that the proposed square footage for the new building is 1,400 square feet. Do you know off the top of your head what the current footprint is right now?
It's much smaller, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know.
Okay, and what else are you, just out of curiosity, what else is going to be used in that building beyond just a restroom?
We have a break room in there for the operators. We have what we are putting at all of our transit centers, which is a wellness room, or actually a mother's room or prayer room for our operators. We have IT. We will have security. When our security comes down here, they can use the facility as well as the partner agencies. They can go in there. We'll have mechanical, janitorial, and I believe a storage room.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah. And restrooms, if I didn't mention that, of course.
So, Ms. Richter, just a question. So while you're saying that there's no land use or design review required, I want to know how can TriMet work with the city staff, both in planning and engineering, to make sure that the proposed design is something that is compatible from our standpoint with our downtown and our, this is like outside of the core downtown, but it's in the downtown area. And how will we be able to work with them?
Well, I think there are two options, Madam Mayor. There's the IGA, that we're going to have a new IGA with TriMet. We talked about amending the current one, and I think we ought to just start fresh. And I think it can have some terms about maintenance and liability and perhaps some discussion about design, if that's what the commission would like. And then the second opportunity that the commission will have is with the permanent obstruction permit, which will have to come before the commission for evaluation. And that could include some consideration of design and design quality as well.
Okay. Well, I think that would be appropriate. And although, none of us are design review experts, I want to be sensitive to Commissioner Mitchell's concern that, we want to make it as compatible as we possibly can, without overrunning any budgets, but there are many things that can be done. And I think just consulting with our community development department and engineering would go a long way to making this be something that everybody is happy with. And again, I know it's just conceptual, so there's still more design that needs to go into it.
A I've got one more question. The no left turn, or the removing that left turn movement made me think of this. And I understand why, and that's good. But that does mean there'll be more around the block traffic, right? Because those buses that now turn left directly into the transit center will go down to 10th Street and turn left, and then turn left, and then turn left again to get in.
And it's kind of it's an awkward movement for a bus.
Yeah, or be a 12.
Or 12.
So it'll depend on the route. But
Sorry, I missed that.
just have to come off of McLaughlin via, to access the one direction flow through the transit center, they'll either make a left on 10th or possibly 12th.
Okay.
So we have those two lighted intersections that have protected left turns.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, they could turn it. They could turn at 12th.
So you could do a 10th and a left, or at 12th, a left and a right.
True, and that'd probably be a better motion than going to 10th.
I think it's just.
Yeah, 10th is, that's
okay,
a short
I didn't think of
block
that.
in
Thank you.
there, and that tends to back up quite a bit, and with a bus, twice as long as vehicles, I see that as being a potential, problem with additional traffic congestion that we don't need there.
I think Commissioner Smith.
Maybe on off-peak times, but like at 5 o'clock or 3:30, it gets to be a little bit of a nightmare there. All right, well, I think you got enough information from us. Is that good, Commissioner?
Mayor, I think Commissioner Smith had a comment still.
Okay.
Just one more.
Okay, go for it.
The street lighting was mentioned here. My assumption is we will be following our new street light plan, which would mean acorn lights and not teardrop lights, because the teardrop lights are just for McLaughlin Boulevard. So I'm assuming they'll match the.
Yeah, that was just really quick.
Yeah.
The one.
Yep. Perfect. Okay.
Yeah, as part of the
You're
permanent
talking about the one on the left, not the one on the right.
Yeah, they'd be the one on the left or something similar to
Yeah, I think they still make those, so.
Yeah, as part of the permanent obstruction permit, we would be doing plan review that would address making
Would go
sure
through
that, the scoring on the sidewalks is appropriate, that all of the sidewalks maintain ADA accessibility, so
Yeah.
where the shelters are placed and making sure there's adequate room around those.
Okay.
I guess, can I just clarify just one more time, because I know how much how many concerns we get about this and how much we try to accommodate multiple uses downtown, right, in a very tight right-of-way section. I think a lot of the discussion we had, I'll just bring this up one more time just to make sure we're all on the same page, right? This trade-off of parking versus in-lane stop. So, losing 2 parking spaces, right now, generally, everyone seems okay with that versus an in-lane stop of, 15 to 25, whatever, the average 20-second stop that we see. And, we struggled with that a little bit in trying to provide feedback on, which one is better, right? And so I'm not hearing too many concerns currently.
I don't like the in-lane stop.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that
understood.
causes backup and congestion. It's not the same way like they do it in Portland. It's different traffic patterns out here.
Okay, I'm seeing head nods at the moment. Okay. And I'd just like to say, appreciate TriMet's willingness to come out and meet with us and walk through this and make, really tried to bring back a thoughtful design that addresses the concerns that we were raising that we believe reflected some of the concerns we've traditionally heard. So thank you very much for that.
Mr. Conkle, there's one more thing. That retaining wall that was built, that's adjacent to KFC that was built as part of this project originally, that is has become a little bit of a problem area. I myself have seen people hanging on that wall and behind that wall, doing things that they probably shouldn't be doing there. And I'm wondering, as part of this project, were we going to try to clean that up a little bit?
So I think that's the heavily landscaped area, kind of at the
Yeah, you see where the crosswalk, where the crosswalk is,
99.
yeah. It's that, as it comes down right next to KFC.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys want to talk to that, or if we can maybe add that as something we could look at.
I think it's something we need to look at.
I think it's something that they can look
Yeah.
at, and we can talk about it later, because it's just been a little bit of a problem area. And I mean, ideally, it would be nice to, there is a little gap in the retaining wall that people have gone through there and then walked down into the landscaping adjacent to KFC. I don't know if that gap needs to be there or not. But it's something I would like to just take a look at as far as overall design and how to clean that up a little bit. Okay. If there's nothing else, then we'll move on to item number 2 under discussion.
Thank you.
And is that
Thank you.
engineering as well, or?
Let's get back. So what I'm wondering is, we've got 15 minutes, roughly. Would you like to start this conversation now? And just agree that we'll stop a little bit before 7 so we can kind of get prepared for the regular 7 o'clock meeting. We did notice the agenda so that after the 7 o'clock meeting, if we wanted to come back to this work session, we could. So I'll leave it up to the commission on how you'd like to proceed.
I'm okay with us doing an introduction of it. I didn't think we were intending to get through the whole thing.
Sound good?
It's fine.
Is that okay, gentlemen?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we'll end at a little before 7. Thank you, Mr. Wheeler.
Maybe I'll just go ahead and
go ahead and introduce
give it a quick start. So there's been some discussion and direction from the commission to look at kind of a couple of things that we've tried to kind of separate out. One was, incentivizing redevelopment in downtown. What that might look like. It started a discussion about, is there a way to address system development charges? Because we received some requests concerning the cost of the SDC on the redevelopment or tenant improvements associated with the redevelopment of certain buildings. The second part was really looking at what are ways that we can incentivize residential development, whether that's through density bonus, others incentives. And so, we've separated those into 2 separate conversations. One is dealing with kind of commercial development and redevelopment versus residential development in subdivisions or multifamily that would be associated with some type of a density bonus that might be tied to affordable housing. So that second component is going to come to you at another date. Right now, we're really focusing on the commercial redevelopment component and question that was asked. And what was interesting was, one of the requests that received dealt with a request to address the city's system development charge cost associated with that tenant improvement. And when we started looking into it, and Josh may have better numbers than I do, but roughly speaking, the SDC was about $140,000. About 110 of that was water environmental services. So really, it wasn't even a city system development charge. And so then we started having discussions about, what do other jurisdictions do, looking at what they might do for historic rehabs. And then we went back and through our Urban Renewal Commission, we had an adaptive reuse program that was much broader in what the grant could be used for. It wasn't just paying an SDC. It was design fees. It was permit fees. It was demolition work. It was providing tenant improvements such as sprinkling, ADA requirements. So it was just a much broader program. So we've added that to this staff report to kind of help talk about what we've done historically in the city through the urban renewal program that sounded like getting to what was asked of the commission. So if we're way off, you know, that's on me. We were trying to bring back some of the things we've historically done. But Josh has put together a presentation on this to kind of walk through, you know, some of the nuts and bolts of system development charges and where we're at. And so I'll go ahead and turn it over to Josh unless you have a specific or any questions for me before we kind of jump into this.
Go ahead, Mr. Wheeler.
Okay. Thank you, Tony. Again, Josh Wheeler, Assistant City Engineer, Public Works. I'm going to do a very brief background just to remind us of where we're at. I'm going to give a few summaries of what we heard from the October 23 meeting, which was the last one we had, and then talk a little bit about that grant program, and also provide some possible criteria to consider and think about. So in red text on the slide, remember that all commercial properties or non-residential are, the use is credited back to the year 2000. And so if that use, if a use existed prior to that, you don't get credit for that. You get credit only to the most recent use up to the year 2000. How do we assess SDCs? Again, they're based on use. So is it a residence? Is it a office building? Is it a restaurant? Is it a hospital? It's always based on use, not based on number of restrooms or number of people inhabiting the structure. It's based on the use of the structure and how that impacts the 5 different SDCs that we have. Reimbursements are given for construction of master plan projects. So sometimes if someone is building a project as part of private development that is a master planned project, they can get reimbursement or credit on their SDCs for doing that work. We have another discount.
The flip side of that is that if it's not on the CIP, it's not creditable.
That is correct.
Right, so if it's not on the capital improvement plan, we're not collecting for it, therefore we can't reimburse on it.
For sure. The other discount that we have is the transportation discount. Often we'll call it the TSDC. And that area exists in the MUD and some of the MUC zones of the city, generally downtown, generally up 7th and Malala. And there'll be a picture of that later. But what that discount does is it looks at those areas of the city and assumes for transportation only that they act as a shopping center, that someone parks in one area and visits multiple properties, and therefore there's not a trip for every property because it's you're reducing the amount of trips by doing that. So some things we heard in 2023 October, don't shortchange SDCs, look-backs should be limited, economic development and or urban renewal should be involved, and that's kind of the direction we are heading with this presentation. Some other responses that we heard was, what can we do? Can we incentivize building of middle housing? And that's the only residential thing I'm gonna talk about briefly. How do we assess SDCs to prevent SDCs from being a deterrent to redevelopment? And what is our infrastructure downtown? And I think that question came from, you know, if you don't have any infrastructure to do downtown, then why do you need to collect SDCs potentially? And I'll talk about that. One thing that was talked about was, you know, how does comprehensive plan land use goal 9 deal with things like this? And really the last sentence on that slide, SDC discounts or exemptions, they do support goal 9 because goal 9 is all about making sure cities and counties have enough land available to realize economic growth. But it doesn't state whether or not a government should assist economically or in some financial way. Middle housing, if you look at some other neighboring cities or ones in Oregon, there's one city that exempts ADUs, so they do not charge SDCs for ADUs. The city of Oregon City does, as well as many other cities. We don't see other cities really giving a discount for middle housing yet. It may be because they've chosen not to. It may be because there are, it's a newer topic still. Or should we kind of leave it alone because we actually already give a discount to them. Middle housing, which is defined as like a duplex, triplex, quadplex, or cluster housing, those are all assessed at an 80% of a single family rate. So if whatever the rate is for a single family house, 80% of that cost is what is charged to a middle housing development per unit. What kind of downtown infrastructure do we have? Well, we've done some recent projects. We recently did a water main in Main Street between 10th and 15th, streetscape a number of years ago, and there's another one coming up. You recently saw some ADA work at 12th and 13th. We had the restroom come in, but that was not SDC eligible, so it doesn't really relate. But here's the key at the bottom of this slide. Remember that SDCs consist of an improvement fee and a reimbursement fee. And a reimbursement fee is for the fair share of the existing capacity. So what's already there and how does it affect that existing infrastructure? The improvement fee is the fair share of that future planned capacity. So if you're increasing the use, if you're putting more trips, if you're putting more flow in the system, how do we upgrade our systems for that? That's what else an STC pays for. It pays for helping that existing system, the reimbursement, and improving and upgrading that future system for the future capacity. Well, what do we have coming? There's another streetscape project on its way that the city was granted an earmark for. The quiet zone, but it is not STC eligible. We do have a pavement maintenance utility fund project coming up, and while it uses PMUF fees, there might be ways to use STCs for some of that. We're looking into that. Our I&I improvements continue, and that will be part of that area sometime in the near future. McLaughlin 990 path, that's you've seen many times in recent months. That is SDC eligible, at least a portion of it. Some other TSP projects. We don't really have any new sewer mains or new water mains that we expect are going to be needed, but we do have a storm sewer that's going to be needed, and that's along 12th Street. So there are a lot of forthcoming projects that will utilize SDCs. So if we do some sort of grant program or reimbursement program or funding assistance plan, whatever terminology we decide to use, should that come from basic general fund economic development budget funds? Should it come from urban renewal funds? Should it come from some other general budget line? And then just generally, should we provide discounts for any other criteria? And if we do so, the discounts require a code change. All the other three require either budget amendments or adjustments to how we're using the current budget or a future budget. What are the pros and cons? With the general fund, the funds are made fairly easily. They're there, but a different program may need cut. Urban renewal funds, the funds are available, but as you know, the Urban Renewal Commission is challenged with some things right now with respect to if the Urban Renewal Commission is willing or even able at this time to use those funds. And then, like I said, a code change, if you do some sort of exemption or reduction or discount, that would require a code change. Tony talked about an adaptive reuse program. You might call it a building rehabilitation program. The Urban Renewal Commission is where that sat last time. $200,000 was set aside. The focus was commercial properties in the Urban Renewal District. It was administered by the Economic Development Department, and $120,000 was provided by Metro, actually, to assist with that program. So that may be something else we want to look into. What kind of things, as the city manager stated, things like design services, structural upgrades, facilities improvements, internal remodeling, those are things that can be used for the program. You may have other things it should be used for, but we think it should all be building focused, not paying down the SDCs. We think there's a trade there that if you pay down some of the cost of the building, then the SDCs are not going to be as prohibitive. So we think a new program might mimic that adaptive reuse program, make sure we're reimbursing improvements, like I said, instead of using SDCs. possibly seeking that grant assistance from Metro if programs exist out there still, and probably administered by the Economic Development Department. One thing that I'm going to show here, and based on the time, I'm going to look at the city manager. We have a number of grant criteria that we want to show you that you might want to look into. And then we have, at the very end, a series of questions of where you'd like us to go next. So do you think this is a good place to
I
stop?
think maybe we take a time out here, and is there anything you've heard so far that you have questions about? Or, you can think about it, and we can tee this up either after the meeting, or we can bring this back at another time to continue.
Gentlemen, any comments? I just have one. I like the idea of taking a look at our old program and sort of revising that to fit what we're trying to do. That way we're not reinventing the wheel. And that would mean working with our engineering and public works and economic development staff.
Okay. I think Commissioner Mitchell had a comment.
Yeah, Commissioner Mitchell?
Just a quick question on the I think it was 15 cities that it said no look back. Does that mean you don't get a credit no matter if you can prove what the pre-existing use was, no matter how long ago, or does it mean there's not a limit on how far they'll look back?
Yeah, so there are cities in the state of Oregon, when we did our survey that we presented last year, that some of them have a specific date, like we do, as the year 2000 as our look back. In fact, we have a whole history that was written within the staff report that talks about we've changed that date several times over the years. But for those cities that have no look back, it means that if you can prove a use existed in whatever year, then, and that was the most recent use, because most often it's the most recent use. Some people will say the most intensive use. So then if it's the most intensive, it's the one that created the biggest burden to the system versus just the most recent. Currently, we use the most recent. Most others use the most recent because they're easier to prove. But if someone knows something 50 years ago and that's the last time the building was used, their codes mean then that's the one you look at if you can prove the actual data that you would need to be able to make that credit.
Okay, thank you.
Adam or Rocky?
No.
Okay, well, let's put a pause on this for now. And shall we adjourn the meeting, Mr. Conkle?
Yes, please.
Okay, so we'll adjourn the work session, and we will come back into session in a few minutes as the regular city commission meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, we're reconvening the city commission work session, and we're down to there's no item number, so it's just commission committee reports. So obviously Commissioner O'Donnell is attending the AWWA conference down here with me, and we've actually seen each other maybe once. So I'll jump to Commissioner Smith.
Did we finish item 2?
Item 2? Oh, no, we didn't finish
Mr.
item 2.
Wheeler is
Sorry,
sitting
let's
in
go
front
back.
of us here looking
I was so
expectantly,
excited
ready
to
to
hear
say
about the
something.
C4 retreat. I wanted to get right to that in Adam's statement. So let's go back to item number 2. So discussion of a systems development charge grant program or something thereof. So where we left off on this, Mr. Conkle?
He's actually stepped out of the room, but Josh is ready to
Oh,
continue his
Josh, are you still there? I can't see. Oh, now I can see you.
I am still here, and Mr. Conkle stepped out, so I will continue where we left off as soon as they give me control.
Thank you.
So we talked a little bit about STCs. We talked a little bit about what was discussed in October of 2023, and we gave you some responses to some of your questions you had in October of 23. And then where we left off was really the grant funding options that you have of either using the code for some sort of discount or finding some source of funds to use for some sort of program. And we gave some pros and cons. And then we introduced this adaptive reuse program, that's what it was called before. And we gave a few details on that. These were items that were part of those possible reimbursements in that adaptive reuse program. And this is kind of where we left off. So we're recommending a similar program. We could name it whatever we choose to name it. But we think the best use of ways to assist older buildings or certain types of buildings to redevelop, to stay viable, to stay usable, is to reimburse some of the improvements of which they need to stay that way. That may be to update their HVAC system. It may be a structural upgrade so that they can add upper floor housing. It may be that they want to switch their use from a storage facility to a restaurant, for example. Those things almost always come with increases in SDCs because the uses often are more intensive than the previous use. And so how do we counter that increase in SDCs? And one way of doing that would be to assist financially with the improvements to those upgrades to create the use that they're looking for. So what kind of criteria do we use to create such a program? One thing that we had thought about was, and this is through numerous other discussions that we've had of, well, should we only focus on historically designated properties? Should we focus on historically eligible properties, those properties which could likely get historic status but don't currently have that status? What boundaries should we use? Should we open this up to all of city limits? Should we look at just the TSDC area that we talked about earlier where the transportation zone is? Should we look at the urban renewal zone? We're going to show you some examples later. Should we look at a specific building age? A building that is of a certain age or older is the one that's eligible. Should we make sure that this is for redevelopment and not new development? If it's a vacant parcel within whatever boundary we're looking at, do we only want to look at redevelopment, that it has to be something that you're rehabbing, not something that you're creating new? Or would you like something for new and have some sort of assistance that way? So here's some examples. Here's a picture that is a boundary of the original city limit, and I know it's small and there's lots of lines on there, but the darker line that goes around there is generally, there's some caveats to that I won't go into, but the original city limit of Oregon City. Is that what we want to use? Because clearly that's a much older area, and maybe that's the area we're trying to revitalize or remain vitalized. Do we want to use the urban renewal district? Now, if you use urban renewal funds, you would likely have to use that district. If you use other funds, it could be a different area, but this is what that looks like. That TSDC discount area for transportation that makes things discounted to make it mimic a shopping center that I spoke about earlier. That's in 3 different colors, the magenta or purple color that goes up Malala and 7th Street, the teal or cyan color that is much of the urban renewal district area, the downtown area, it's all MUD zoned, as well as the Willamette Falls district. Again, historically designated properties, what does that look like? So what this is showing you in the magenta color is the historic properties currently designated in the McLaughlin Conservation District. In Kanema, not surprisingly, in the Kanema District, are the yellow ones. And then there are a smattering of others in kind of a reddish color that are throughout the rest of the city. Now you'll see that the entire city limits is not shown on that map, and that is because there are no other historic properties outside of what I'm showing right there. So I cut that off for a reason to try and make that as big as humanly possible on our screens. But it kind of shows you where the historic focus is in the majority of the city. But there is more that's eligible. Now the picture on the left is zoomed out just to kind of show that there are some other areas out there, but I zoomed in to the downtown area to show kind of where the mass of those areas are. And there are a lot of properties that are historically eligible, they just haven't become historic yet, if that became a criteria you were looking for to use. So what I have here is 3 questions. The first question goes to an October 2023 question. The other 2 questions go to this grant program. And so what we're looking for here is some sort of guidance, some direction by the commission on how do we move forward. The first question is, does the City Commission wish to provide an additional SDC discount or exemption for middle housing? Now remember I said that middle housing already gets a 20% discount, that the cost of a middle housing, a duplex, triplex, or quadplex, or cluster house per unit is 80% the cost of a single family. And so is that sufficient now? If not, what would you like to do? And if so, just know that requires a code amendment. So we'd be looking for some discussion on that.
You want to just start with that one?
Yeah, that's what I'd prefer rather than going to the next slide.
Okay, gentlemen. Mike, you have thoughts?
Well, I guess my thought is I think the discussion of residential SDCs is a much bigger discussion. And I don't know that I'm ready to weigh in on this one particular question when I'd kind of like to look at the whole thing.
I think this is something we could bring back. I had a conversation with Mr. Mitchell and provided the system development charge, residential system development charge sheets that we have on our website that we utilize. You know, I think maybe that's something we bring back and walk through that shows the difference between a single family, because there are nuances in there, right? Especially as it relates to the system development charges associated with water environmental services, and their discount based on the square footage size of a home. And then, you know, we have single family attached, we have apartment, we have ADU, we have duplex, right? So maybe that is a separate conversation that we could dive into the actual SDC of each building type.
I would totally agree with you, Michael. It's a bigger conversation. I think what we were talking about and what I was suggesting that we look at is some sort of program for the historic core that was similar to the adaptive reuse program that we had before to help people with these older buildings, which are seismically challenged and many other things. And I think we need to look at a program. Like I said, maybe the easiest way is to take the program we already had and modify it, and that's going to take a little bit more time. I'm not, the SDC thing about middle housing is a completely different topic than the one that I was leaning into with regard to our downtown buildings that may be historically eligible, and we have many of them, so.
And that would be what our second question was. You know, part of the presentation was just to make sure we were answering that October 23 question, but if the other commissioners agree that that's a good topic for a future meeting, then I can move on to the second question.
I will just add that in addition to middle housing, because middle housing is the duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, cottage clusters, and townhouses, that we also look at multifamily as well. Obviously understanding that it has its own unique formula, but if we're looking at reductions, what I'm thinking about specifically where I would like to see more housing is on upper floor on Main Street. And that's the kind of incentives that I think we should also remember to include as we have this larger discussion. But I agree, I would prefer to just focus on the commercial right now.
Yeah, I agree with you on the housing, but to me, it's a little bit separate from middle housing. It's sort of a little bit different of an animal.
Well, seeing some head nods and some discussion there, and in the sake of time, I'll move on to the second question. So does the City Commission want staff to prepare a funding grant program to assist redevelopment cost? And if so, should that be via a code discount or through the general fund or urban renewal? And I'll show you the third question because it's going to relate. No matter where that funding is provided, what criteria should be included? So are we looking at historically designated, historically eligible, boundary of the city, location, no boundary at all? those things. So first is, do you want to create a program, and how would you like to potentially fund it, or code change it? And then second, some of your criteria.
Can we work backwards from that, decide what we want to be in it, and then decide about how we want to fund it? Because I don't support it being for new development. It's got to be for redevelopment, which is what we already have. And I think that it needs to be buildings that are historically eligible within the urban renewal boundary. I said I hope springs eternal that we're going to be able to use some of that money, so it might have to be a combination. We only have one designated building downtown. At least the one I'm aware of that's on the National Register.
How old does a building have to be historically eligible?
It needs to be at least 50. And I would say the ones that are identified in our downtown historic inventory, we've got a number on the list, probably, I would say at least 10 to 12. There are some that are what I would say beyond taking them back. But that doesn't mean that they couldn't apply for a tenant improvement. But in terms of them being eligible, give you an example. So a building that would be eligible for the National Register would be the Masonic Lodge, but they would have to remove the plastic windows. Other than that, it's pretty well intact. But it is National Register. The courthouse is eligible for both the city's inventory, landmark status, and National Register. 1933 Art Deco.
Well, I definitely agree that should be for redevelopment.
Do we have consensus on that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so definitely not for new development. And it wouldn't apply to somebody who tears something down and then wants to build something new either.
I guess I'm leaning a little more towards specific building age, and you could make it 50 years.
50 is the criteria.
Yeah, but instead of saying historically eligible, just go by the building age.
I would say that having it be historically eligible is a definite bonus, because then they can apply for historic rehab tax credits, which would couple very nicely with anything we would be creating.
Well, a building that's 50 years old,
it can be 50 years, it has to be at least 50 years old to be historically eligible. It's got to have some character defining features on it. There's the building down there that's got that I would say it's got foam that was put on the exterior of it. I don't think that stuff is coming off anytime soon. That would not, it may be old, but it's not eligible. You can't even tell it's old anymore because of the alteration that was made to it.
So what I'm trying to, in my mind, decide is it the building age that matters, or is it whether or not it's historically eligible that matters?
They're
not, I'm not sure.
They're not separated. They're the same thing, basically. If it's historically eligible, it's going to be 50 years or older.
And I would
but there are buildings that are 50 years old that aren't historically eligible, right?
That is correct, according to Christina Robertson Gartner, who takes care of
Like I said, I just listed off a couple of them that, well, they've been severely compromised.
Along the same line of discussion, what there's no real incentive, even if we award money, that, I mean, I guess I don't understand why it is important that they're historically eligible, because the likelihood of them trying to make them designated even after they get the money is rare. I mean, we only have one building downtown anyway, because those building owners don't want to be set in stone on what they can do with their buildings. So giving money to a historically eligible building doesn't make any difference in the future whether or not they go towards that, unless we
that
made
may
it
be
that
something
way.
we might ask them to do that.
Well,
because
that's a different story.
There's grants and funding available from the state that basically, that's called Diamonds in the Rough.
Okay.
Our friends at John Q. Adams and 7th, some of the money they got. And one of the criteria for diamonds in the rough is it has to be on a local inventory, which their building was. And they received a nice little chunk of change that went along with some other funding they received to, so it's an incentive, I think, to be eligible. That way you can get your opportunities for additional funding are far more greater than any building that's not. Our money will be like a little drop in the bucket, but you combine it with other funding sources, it makes a lot of difference.
Well, I would love to see that work. I guess my worry...
We can add that and make it, you know, suggest we add that.
I guess my worry is...
I agree with you, Rocky.
As being, because I would love to see some of those buildings do that. We just know the hoop of, the leap that takes for business owners to do that. And if this is something that helps that, I guess I'd be supportive of it. But here's the problem.
Well, we're talking about property owners, not the business owner.
Yes, sure. But on the same token, when we did this grant for in urban renewal, as well, I know there was several grants, and I'm not going to name them, but by memory, there was multiple that say, hey, we want this grant for urban renewal to renovate the inside of our building because we're going to take it from this non-use to this use that we really want. And we thought, oh, that's exciting. We gave them the money, and then that use never came about. Same thing with this. If we gave them the money towards working towards historic registration and they never do it, then, you know, what are the...
We get the money back.
Well, and we've never done that. I mean, we've done this so many times in urban renewal where we didn't go back and account for that. And you know, I think if we can make sure, and I don't know how you do that because not every, you know, thing's going to go forward exactly perfectly. You can say, well, we'd love to, you know, renovate this building to have housing in the second floors, but there's no guarantee that'll ever happen.
Well, they have to, you know, the thing we did with our grant before when Lloyd was administering it, they had a 5-year time frame where they had to maintain, and Herb Arbor took advantage of one of those adaptive reuse grants for his downstairs, and he got it done.
Well, the ones that I remember didn't get done.
Yeah, well, that way we have to make sure we hold their feet to the fire. This is a different commission than it was before. And if we give people money, we have a certain expectation that what they say they're going to do gets done, and we take the money back. They have to repay it. That's pure and simple. It's not free without any consequences. Was there any provision in the previous grant program, Josh, that you're aware of that was said, you know, obligated them to complete the project or do it?
The program was a reimbursement program, so the work had to occur. So if they were doing a rehab, all the work and the permits had to be issued, work had to be done, and once it was done, then they got reimbursed back. So the work was done, but was there any provision for anything after that? I don't know.
Yeah. See, that's how they're on the hook, Rocky, is that it's reimbursable. We're not just giving them money. They have to perform in order to get the reimbursement.
But I don't remember any, like, requirements to be designated, right, out of the project.
No, we didn't have that from before.
I don't remember any of those specifically.
Yeah, we never touched on that.
And I don't think we had, like, you know, like I can remember a couple where they were going to bring a business in, right, and they did. The one, like, some of the successful ones when they did, but I don't remember, like, some grants you'll see, you know, you have to be, if you say you're going to bring 25 employees, right, 3-4 years, whatever it is, you have to have 25 employees, right? You receive a little bit of money every time. I don't ever remember doing that. I remember it being more
We didn't do that.
You finished the TI, showed us the receipts, we reimbursed up to the grant amount. I don't remember there being like a long-term, multiple-year commitment.
No. We had a program like that at PDC where they had to show for a certain amount of time the number of employees, and if they didn't, then they had to reimburse the money.
Sorry, I didn't hear what you said. Mary, I didn't hear what you said because I was speaking.
Oh, I said we had a program where I worked where they were required to maintain, it was a jobs and tenant improvement. They had to show so many jobs and they had to document that. Otherwise, they were on the hook for the funding.
Yeah.
And we got the, when somebody didn't meet that, they got the money back. There was no exception. That was what they signed up for. But I think the reimbursable thing is critical because you don't get the money. That's the grant that we're working on right now downtown. The work has to be performed and then they apply for the reimbursement.
And the other thing that I would add,
Only fair way.
the other thing I would add, in looking at a commission report from 2012 is, the commission had the ability to approve the grant awards. And so the projects had to meet a specific criteria. It couldn't just be something like, add a restroom because we could use another restroom or something like that. It had to have a number of criteria, like here's one that seismically upgraded a building. It was going to have a staff of 12. It was going to reuse existing materials where possible. So I think there was some sort of goal in the program that helped it define how to get the grant. Once they got the grant, then they had to do the work and then get reimbursed for that.
Like I said, I was hoping we could just take the old program and modify it to some degree to meet what we want to try to do this time and do that maybe and then have a more discussion about it so we actually have something we're kind of looking at. But
Is the goal, I've heard a couple things, buildings over 50 years versus incentivizing residential versus, I think back then the goal was to try to just get investment downtown, honestly. I think some of the criteria had to deal with, could you bring in employment, but that was like worth some points, but it was never, I don't remember it being, I agree with you, right? There were some that were successful and there's some that didn't quite.
No, that wasn't our part criteria. There was the point scale, like you said.
Like us to kind of take the criteria we had before, kind of package that up into something that could be discussed.
I think that's a great idea.
Think about it a little more. Which money tree we're going to ring.
That's for the color printer in the basement, 3D printer in the works. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. You guys okay with that? Bring something back and we can kind of mash it over and chew on it.
I'd like to have a stronger discussion about what the real outcome is supposed to be. The truth is even if they say, hey, we're inclined to put this building on the historic register, this is the steps we need to do and do it, and we say, great, put in new windows, whatever, and then we put in their new windows and they never go forward to designate because they want to change the building in 10 years. That's a problem. And if the goal is to support housing in the upper floors and we do that and then they decide later they're just going to use it for offices, then why did we do that? And if it's just putting investment into downtown, let's just say that, just hand out money.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
We haven't been able to ever solidify that money is going to the purpose that we sought when we really said. We've seen things, like we're going to renovate this building so we can put a restaurant in it. Well, the restaurant never came, but the building got fixed, So
the different commission, we're
the
a
hope
little
is
more
that we get a
hard-nosed
new
about it.
tenant in that building, that's great. But if we're pitched a restaurant and the restaurant never comes and it's an office, then maybe they shouldn't have got the money. So we got to be very specific about what we want and what the outcome is going to be and hold them to it somehow. I don't know, and we haven't yet been able to do that.
Or is the goal, I'm just throwing this out, or is the goal bigger than that? The goal is just to renovate, update, improve older rundown buildings downtown, period.
Right.
Whether it's for a restaurant,
like
housing.
Like storefront grants were, and that was successful because it did what,
Right, the end
It's
use.
to incentivize
the market needs to
reinvestment
tell
in
us what the
downtown.
end use is going to be. what our intention is to make it a more of an asset to our downtown, and hopefully does all these other cool things. But I think it's just a big goal.
Yeah.
I think I agree with you. It's to incentivize reinvestment, to invigorate and jumpstart downtown so that we have an active, vibrant, we're calling ourselves historic downtown Oregon City, but it's technically not really, it's only historic in name, it's not historic in deed. We can deal with that as another issue. I want to see us help people do something with stuff that they've got down there, because it's a wasted asset, and putting residential would help.
Just two quick things, Mayor. So I would say, first of all, I would prefer that we really haven't gotten into funding because we're having a lot of prior conversations of that, but just in anticipation of that, I'll say the way that I'm leaning is that I would much prefer to be doing this through urban renewal, depending on our ability to do so. Barring that, and if we aren't able to, looking at an existing source of funding so we don't shortchange our SDCs. Something that went through my mind, and before anyone comes at me, just let me finish, is I was thinking about the sidewalk replacement assistance program, which I think has been a huge success, but ideally, as that program continues moving on, the hope would be that not as many people are needing to use it because those repairs are being made. And I think the city has done a great job at getting out to the neighborhoods and communicating that this is a program that we want people to take advantage of. But I do believe that over just the 1 or 2 years that we've been doing this, that my assumption would be that things have maybe slowed down a little bit. And I'm getting a head nod from Mr. Wheeler. So when we're
correct.
I think we just need to check. That might be transportation funding rather than general fund money. I got to check that. For some reason, I'm thinking it was gas tax money.
You are correct, Mr. Conkle, that while that program may decline over time, the expenses are showing a decline, although the amount of code enforcement is still pretty high. It is designated funds that have to be used for a transportation purpose.
Could it go toward transportation SDCs?
That's something we would have to look into.
Okay, I just wanted to throw that out as a suggestion because if we are not able to use urban renewal, which again is my preference, knowing that we will have to cut something else is just something that we need to be thinking about far ahead in advance.
No, you're correct.
And I'll go along with that and say that of the three options you presented, the one actually reducing the SDC fee is off the list for as far as I'm concerned. And urban renewal would be number one, and general fund would be number two. And that's setting aside the whole urban renewal question.
Yeah. The problem with the SDC reduction is that it has to be made up someplace else. And I was not initially feeling that way, but after having a discussion with Mr. Wheeler and Mr. Lewis, I'm leaning more towards their concern. Because it's not always about the SDC, it's really about the issue of adaptive reuse. Well, you're right, Rocky, I hear the fireworks.
I didn't think they had them on Thursdays.
I don't know, I hear boom, 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 and I can see something in the sky.
I don't know what day it is. They're supposed to only have fireworks on Friday, Saturday nights, I think on the weekends, so maybe they have another show, but.
So it sounds like we could take the previous program and like pull those criteria that were utilized forward, bring this back for a discussion focusing on really, here's the criteria we used before, here was the objective of that program, what do we want the objective of this potential new program to be, and kind of begin this discussion there. Is that reasonable, or?
And potential financing, funding options, and what that might look like.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you, guys. All right,
Can I throw out
so,
two?
absolutely.
And I don't, maybe this is a separate discussion, and I kind of hate to bring it up because looking at the history, we've been bouncing back and forth, and I'm sure there was a good reason why it was decided the way it was, whenever it was decided. But if you look at other cities comparable to us on your comparison, look back to 2000, we are out of step with pretty much everybody else. Everybody else either has no look back date or it's back in the 70s. And I'm also struggling with most recent use and most intensive use. And again, I think it's something that bounced back and forth, but I have a little bit of trouble with most recent as opposed to most intensive. And maybe that's probably another discussion for another day, and I probably just muddied the water. So let's get the basics of a program together and then look at how our actual SDCs are calculated.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to commission reports. I know you guys got a long day and want to get done in the next 10 minutes. So, Commissioner Smith, what's going on with Clackamas Heritage Partners? Is there a proposal out to look for a new ED?
Well, actually, we haven't had a meeting, but I know that there were interviews for a replacement for Gail's position, but we haven't had a meeting. I think our meeting is scheduled for Thursday, but I haven't confirmed that. I can't remember what we went over at our last staff work meeting. Do we have a report from South Fork?
I have my notes here. We had Libby from Consort talk to us about, let's see here. I've got my notes. Talking about a plan for public engagement well in advance of us coming out and asking for any funding, but we're doing we got an overview of water quality, resilience, and capacity, our capital projects update, and they're putting together numbers for what that might be. We're looking at sources and methods of future funding. That's what I've got in a nutshell.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's it. And the conference that you're at right now.
Okay, Mr. Marl.
Yes, so CIC, prior to our regular meeting this month, we actually held a work session to talk further about the budget, and I think that there was a good outcome from the way that I interpreted it. I believe that the CIC is moving forward with trying to reapportion the way that they dole out the money that we give to them. So looking at how many meetings they have per year rather than strictly how many households are in the neighborhood. And there was conversations from certain neighborhoods about maybe looking at how many meetings they have per year. For example, if there's a neighborhood that has 6 per year and there isn't great attendance, maybe looking at reducing that to try and gain more attendance from residents. So I thought that was a really productive work session, and we all, I think, started at the same baseline that the money is still there and the money has gone unspent for several budget cycles now. It's just been a matter of making sure that it is apportioned correctly, and that if for some reason there is a shortfall, that would absolutely be something that we would be looking into. C4, which is apparently the mayor's favorite subject, we have our upcoming retreat this weekend on Friday and Saturday. We're going to be discussing transportation, which includes tolling, but also looks ahead to the 2025 transportation package in the state legislature and what it is we'd like to see there. We're also going to be talking about housing and economic development as well, but I think at least for me, I'm most looking forward to the transportation conversation. And then Youth Advisory Commission, we had our final meeting of this term last night. They got a tour of the Public Works and Operations building. They went over bylaws and the ordinance that originally created that body, looking over things that have worked and things that haven't worked. And so coming up here soon, we're going to see a recommendation for edits and revisions to that. We talked about recruitment going on. I'm really excited because this morning I spoke at CASE with some students about the potential of applying for the Youth Advisory Commission. And then this afternoon, I got notification that we had 2 applicants that afternoon from CASE. So really
awesome.
excited about
Thank you.
that. Yes, thank you. And then the clothing drive did occur, and I thought it was a success, and I'm really excited to see that we ended up we finished off our first final full session with such a great event. And so I appreciate all the work that has gone into that from staff. Lastly, this is something I just want to throw out there. This isn't a committee report, but I was recently talking to one of our colleagues on Milwaukee City Council about a variety of things, and she brought up the Homeless Solutions Coalition of Clackamas County and noted that their city council actually has a liaison to the Homeless Solutions Coalition of Clackamas County. And I was wondering if we thought it might be a good idea for us to have a commission liaison to that body so that we can all be better informed about what's going on. And when we do get those many questions that we get about this project, which we are not a part of, that we would have someone on the inside who's at least being able to relay that information to us and also being able to relay our concerns to them in the moment at those meetings rather than us having to be more reactive and host a meeting specifically related to that. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Anyway, just for your information, Mr. Smith, there are fireworks going off like crazy. I can hear them.
I think it's part of
Mr. Mitchell.
I'll just start by saying I think that liaison idea is a great idea.
Let's have further discussion about it.
From C4 Metro, I had mentioned a few meetings ago that SMART, Wilsonville's bus system, was working on a bus on shoulder program between Wilsonville and Clackamas Town Center, and that's actually going to happen. They're looking at it's going to launch in November. They've got the buses, either they already have them or they're already ordered and they're going to be in by then, and they have to do a little bit of shoulder work, but that's actually going to happen with a stop.
What does that mean?
The bus is going to travel its route on the shoulder of I-205 from Wilsonville to Clackamas Town Center, and there's a sign on the back of the bus that says bus on shoulder and warning signs or whatever, going from Wilsonville to Clackamas Town Center with a stop at our transit center in downtown Oregon City, which we just talked about earlier. The other thing, really quickly, at the Metro Urban Growth Boundary Roundtable, they give us a little bit of information on how we're going to be given our share of housing that's necessary. Metro is going to be coming up with a number this fall for the whole metro area, and then the State Department of Administrative Services, whoever that is going to allocate that to cities. There's 2 parts of that. There's how many housing units we need to build to catch up from how far we're behind, and then added to that how many we need going forward. And so each city is going to be given a number, adding up those 2 components. But we're also, every city they're going to look back somehow, and we're going to get credit for housing units that we've built toward that target over the last, I don't know how far they're going to go back. So if you've built housing already to help catch up, you're going to get credit for having done that. So And they're looking at it's a 6-year target that they're working on. And like I said, the metro number is going to be produced this fall sometime, and then they'll start allocating it out, whoever the mysterious Department of Administrative Services is. That's it from me.
Okay. Clackamas Water Environmental Services Policy Committee, the budget was approved on the 28th of April by the county commissioners. The Downtown Oregon City Association held a successful wine walk on the 18th of May. It was sold out. Impact, again, very similar to what Mike said about the housing numbers, although there was quite a bit of questioning from Happy Valley and Tigard about some of the numbers, and so they're going to go back and do some additional work. We probably will have a request. We have a request in from Metro to brief us about the proposed housing bond. We were supposed to hear about that at the Metro mixer, but Lynn Peterson was ill, so that did not take place. And I think that their Ms. Marissa Madrigal didn't want to get into it too much, so it didn't get discussed there. South Fork, I just told you what we did at our last meeting. Commissioner O'Donnell and I are attending the AWWA. My session today was talking all about how to remove things that we don't want in our water, in the water, and taking it out of the water. A lot of things we are already doing at South Fork, but there's obviously a lot more that we can do. Willamette Falls and Landings Heritage Area, we had a program at the Wilsonville Library on the influence of the Chinese community along the landings areas on the Willamette. Legacy Project, obviously, you know that Governor Brown was named the new new executive director, taking the place of Andrew Mason. We're looking forward to having some conversations with them. And the LOX authorities that we've been approving some of our financial policies and arrangements to, and our IGA we have with the Corps of Engineers on the work. They're still continuing to work on the LOX. We're finalizing that IGA. And then you heard from Adam already about the Youth Advisory Commission. We said we're saying goodbye to 4 seniors, Bella, Henry, Bailey, and Brianna, who will be graduating, and they've all been very outstanding students. Adam said the clothing drive was really good project. Looks like they probably want to continue that next year. We now, I think, as Adam said, we got 2 applications. I haven't seen them yet, but there's 2 more that are pending. So hopefully, when I get back, I can make sure that we have a meeting with Oxla. I gave a talk about how you create an ordinance and a resolution at Springwater Environmental. And I talked to the 8th graders about the Youth Advisory Commission as well. So we're getting the word out there, and I'm trying to get an appointment to go to North Christian School to talk to their students about the program as well. We had a student our first year from there, and he ended up being our vice president. So other than that, the event at with the Cayuse Memorial, I just want to again commend staff on their exceptional work. And even though it was a very, very long program, it was very meaningful. And we talked about it before, but I think I've heard a lot of really good comments about the press release that was sent out. And also want the staff to know that Hannah Schmidt has been doing an amazing job. And she's had, I would say, the patience of Job. Sometimes the students don't respond, and she was very clear at our last meeting that she is expecting responses from them. So we will emphasize that a little more. And that's it. Anything at the end, Mr. Conkle, or are we ready to adjourn?
Ready to adjourn.
All right. I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you, gentlemen. And Mr. Wiley, I will see you Friday morning to sign everything that I need to sign. Is that okay?
Yep, sounds good.